Welcome, everyone. First, I hope everyone is healthy and safe and doing what they need to do to stay that way. My name is Andrea Ray, and I have the pleasure to serve as the President CEO at the Chamber. And on behalf of our board and staff, welcome to our SMART Southside Mitigation and Recovery Task Force webinar today, where we're fortunate enough to present an overview of transportation equity. We know a key component to all of our EDI work at the Chamber is increasing access, and transportation access and equity is key as we advocate and work to build back better for our recovery. This copyrighted webinar is presented by the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of the Chamber. Thank you to our sponsors, South King Media. Scott and Teresa Schaefer have been tireless advocates for our community. As a small business themselves, they are dedicated to helping other small businesses grow, as well as keeping our community connected and informed. Scott is broadcasting this webinar live on Facebook so that even more people are able to watch with us and attend live, ask questions. And we are recording so that those that aren't able to join live can still access this very important information later at their convenience. The Chamber will continue to produce webinars and virtual events on subjects impacting our community, and we hope you'll join us in the future. You can register for all of our webinars and virtual events on our website, seattlesouthsidechamber.com. We know providing opportunities to share information and connect will make our community stronger and ready for recovery. We hope you can join us for more of these opportunities. And if you or your company is able to donate or sponsor our work so that we can continue to serve our community in and through every challenge, it would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps. Even a donation of $1 brings us closer to recovery and helps keep our nonprofit strong and able to serve our community. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today that we'll hear from. First, we'll hear from Bebhinn Gilbert. Bebhinn is the South King County Mobility Coordinator with the Mobility Management Team at Hopelink. She staffs the South King County Mobility Coalition, where she works with community partners to help make transportation a community-wide resource for everyone rather than a barrier to service. She coordinates free travel training programs available to South King County, providing information during staff trainings, public transit orientations, and resource tabling sessions. Bebhinn began her career in community service through organizing and volunteer coordination. She has an education in urban planning and environmental studies. The work she does is fueled by her belief that communities should be accessible for all. We'll also hear from King County Metro with Cindy Chen and Will Pearson. Cindy is a customer relationship manager and market and business development at King County Metro Transit in Seattle, Washington. She works with employers on ORCA Business Passport program, in which institutions and companies across the region can purchase transit passes for their employees. She also works with local jurisdictions and large employers on their commute trip reduction programs. She recently completed a master's in public administration at the Evans School at the University of Washington while working at Metro in community engagement for the past few years. Will is a management consultant and transportation planner based out of Bellevue with project experience in behavior change, outreach, engagement, pedestrian wayfinding, and product R&D. He has also engaged broadly with major event projects for stadiums and other developments, all of which are born from an understanding of the need to transition to more sustainable methods of travel and development. Will currently serves as the project manager for WSDOT Small Business Incentive, the SBI program, which has delivered transit subsidies to almost 250 small businesses across the state and has partnered with over 80 unique organizations and firms within the region. Lastly, we'll hear from Gracie Geremia from Lyft. Gracie is Lyft's community engagement lead for Pacific Northwest and Hawaii, leading Lyft's regional partnerships and relationships with community-based organizations, drivers, and passengers. Gracie previously worked as an engagement consultant, helping government agencies build inclusive and equitable engagement plans. Her passion for transportation equity stems from her experience working at nonprofits and as a case manager connecting individuals to essential services and resources. She has a master's in public administration, also from the University of Washington's Evans School of Public Policy. We are so grateful that all of you took the time to be with us today and walk us through the program. So Bebhinn, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. As introduced, my name is Bebhinn Gilbert. I'm the South King County Mobility Coordinator with Hopelink. If you could go to the next slide, Preston. I want to start our conversation with a quick illustration of what mobility means in South Seattle and in South King County. Because mobility is sometimes this jargony word that we use, but really it just means it's a tool for us to talk about all the ways that a person gets around and gets to where they need to go. So the images on the screen right now represent most of the public transit options in Seattle and available to community members, along with a few private services. Not shown on the screen and certainly of note are the volunteer services, the kind of community-based services, and the resources we have when we think about our social networks, you know, carpooling with a friend or getting a ride from a family member. I like to start the conversation around equity here because equitable transportation is really connected to choice and to access. So next slide, please. Equitable transportation has, of course, been a conversation, an important ongoing conversation in South King long before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the pandemic has demonstrated to us, and the recovery from the pandemic has demonstrated to us several points with data that we have known for a while anecdotally. And that being said, throughout the pandemic, several of our transportation providers, several of our transportation agencies had to understandably limit their service areas or their service hours. Regardless of that, or despite that, we have seen steady transit use in South King County. For instance, the 10 routes in that King County Metro has seen the least change in ridership with have all run through South King County and South Seattle. The routes with the highest weekday ridership are also in South King and in South Seattle. So this demonstrates that our community has a high instance of transit dependency. And that being said, that's when a community member or their primary point of access to their community is through public transportation. That's connected to the fact that the suspensions that we've seen in South King County have been toward peak service routes rather than all-day service. So that's a great point for equity in our area. And that restoration is underway. So King County Metro has recently announced that they are at 85% of their pre-COVID service levels. And then the graphic that's on the screen here demonstrates the equity priority areas. And so you can see in the blue, there's a strong concentration of equity service areas in South King. That means areas that are transit dependent, that have community members who need to access public transportation and who for whom those resources are crucial connections to their community. Next slide, please. So the diversity of choices, the diversity of service levels really does feed into the work of the mobility management team. We are grounded in the understanding that transportation is connected to every facet of a person's life, be them critical resources like getting to and from work or to and from a medical appointment. Also, connected to the more social aspects of a person's life, connection to community, connection to loved ones or hobbies. Transportation is there in the background for every facet of a person's life. And so we work to make sure that folks are connected to the resources they need so that they can get to where they're going. We do this in several ways, through mobility education and outreach services and through coalition and advocacy work. So if you could go to the next slide. In the South King County Mobility Coalition, we work to coordinate across sectors. So we work not only with transportation providers, but also local businesses and nonprofits to make sure that the needs of community members are met. We collaborate to find solutions so that the mobility landscape is accessible to all, and we advocate for changes that benefit our community. Really, we're working locally to understand that mobility doesn't, stop at neighborhoods. It's this interconnected resource. And our vision, what we're working toward is making sure that the network works for all people. We have an equity-based lens in that we prioritize the needs of transportation disadvantaged communities. If you can remember the blue areas in the graphic from a previous slide. And it pairs with our education and outreach services. If you could go to the next slide, Preston. Our education and outreach services are all about making sure that the information is available and accessible to all community members so that they can use the assets that exist in our region. We do this by working with nonprofits and agencies, employers to describe and train your staff so that you're ready to support your clients and your employees so that they know the choices available to them and how to access their community. We also work directly with community members. We meet them where they are, at libraries and schools and other community conversion points. We talk about barriers that you're facing and how to overcome them. We provide resources free to the community to do so. Next slide, please. We also have, as part of our coalition work, an arm that does needs assessments and research into our community. And so recently, the King County Mobility Coalition completed a needs assessment for transportation needs in our county. These are the 5 identified top needs from that research, and I'd like to highlight them here. So we have seen a need for better connections to employment centers and services, medical centers, of course, with special connection between the rural and suburban populations. Our county, our area is incredibly diverse in terms of density and urban and suburban levels, and so connections between those areas are incredibly important. We also see a need for better connections within local neighborhoods so that people can get to, like I was saying, those not only those essential services, but those community services, those connections to their hobbies, their loved ones, their social networks. More culturally competent education and outreach is, of course, required. And this is beyond simple translation of services and of descriptions of routes. It includes, adaptive programming, information that answers the culturally important questions for our community members, images that represent our community members themselves so that they can see themselves in the services provided. All of that is encompassed in culturally competent outreach. We also see a need for a reduction of confusing or the overwhelming information options. And that's really where our education and outreach is positioned to help. We understand the complexity of our network, and we're here to simplify it and make it usable for folks. And then finally, we see a need for off-peak options. And that really goes to the first point that I brought up at this presentation. Our transit-dependent community members are using transportation services throughout the day to reach every point of their lives. So that means that we need to think beyond transportation from beyond the 9 to 5 commuter to the transit user, someone who this is how they access their lives. And then with that, I will pause. If you want to learn more about our work, you can by all means visit our website to learn more about not only King County Mobility Coalition, but also our sub-regional coalitions, so the South King County Mobility Coalition. I will also share in the follow-up to this meeting some information regarding the research documents that I mentioned, so the needs assessment and other assets. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bebhinn. Really, really appreciate that insight. And now we're so thrilled to be able to welcome Cindy and Will. Cindy and Will, take it away.
Thank you very much. William Pearson here on behalf of King County Metro. Very excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about these important topics. If you could hop to the next slide. So my role on behalf of King County Metro is to be the project manager for the Orca Passports Small Business Incentive Program, which is what we're going to be chatting about today. When we think of mobility equity, transportation equity, we want to see programs like this, and that's why I'm so excited to talk about it. So if we hop to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So essentially, this program is an opportunity to provide a sort of unlimited ridership annual upfront subsidy applied program with the Orca business product for your employees now through the end of the month, basically up until June 2021. It's a great opportunity to sort of have the opportunity to provide the annual sort of unlimited ridership of Passport at a reduced price for employees, especially as we look at all of the great transportation options coming to the region over the coming years, especially when we've seen Northgate getting in the news recently about opening up. It's a really exciting time if you've been thinking about looking at transit options for your employees to get on board and try this service out. As mentioned, the deadline is coming up pretty soon, so that's why we're very excited to talk today and sort of spread the word and try and get people signed up for the program. Essentially, the sort of very limited requirements are that you haven't already offered transit benefits to employees before, and that you have 5 or more employees at your current work site. If we could hop to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So again, we sort of saw a very quick look at a lot of transportation options from the previous presenter, and this is just to look through and see it works on King County Metro. The Orca card works on Sound Transit. It's a regionally adaptive card, and it provides an incredible amount of flexibility and options, which is what we're trying to obviously encourage with the mobility equity piece. Next slide, please. And just another couple highlights here before we jump off. The monorail, van pool, van share, home free guarantee program, all other fantastic ways to use this product and sort of provide that flexibility for an employee. Say if they miss the bus, they have that other option there outside of normal hours. It's sort of just a great way to make sure that there are options for people who depend on transit, options for people who maybe just don't want to drive at all to work anymore. As we come out of the pandemic, we want to be flexible. We want to have all of these options available to people. So it really is a great opportunity to get in there and use this program for a cheaper cost up front. Next slide. Thank you very much. Again, this is just the quick summary. I've been through a lot of these points already, but just for the sake of going through them again, the key date there is open through May 2021. So as soon as June comes up, that's when we kind of are wrapping up the program. A couple of those high-level points again, around 100 employees is the cap. So if you're around there, get in touch with us. We'd love to chat and sort of help you get set up with this program. Again, just the only other requirements being that you need 5 or more employees currently to sign up for the Orca Passport program. And there are a couple surveys that come along with that as well. The last slide that I have before I'll pass it off to Cindy to talk more about the sort of mobility equity components from the Metro perspective is just a quick example of what this looks like for the South King region. So, say we have 20 benefit eligible employees. There's the average cost of 166.4. There's the total cost, the 3,300, and with the subsidy applied, that's a 50% rebate on that overall program cost, which works out to be a nice reduction with the 83 annual per employee cost. So it's a great deal right now. If you have any questions about taking advantage of it before the program comes to a close, please do get in touch with myself or Cindy. We'd love to chat with you. Here's a couple of resources. There's the www.orcasmallbiz.com website, where you can learn more about the program and get in touch with us through the online form. And then there's the kingcounty.gov website for more information about passport and choice programs, which I believe Cindy will have a quick slide about as well. And obviously Cindy's email, if you would like to contact her directly, which I encourage. All right, that's all for me. I think I'll hand it off to Cindy with that. Thank you very much again for your time.
Great. Next slide, please. Thanks, Preston. Yeah, thanks, Will, for going over the business program. So I'm going to shift our focus a little bit more just to Metro and kind of what we're doing around health and safety on our services. As Bebhinn mentioned, we've seen the least drop off in South King County and South Seattle. So naturally, we know people are really riding, and a lot of your employees and companies may still be commuting right now. So just to refresh your memory, or if most of your employees have been teleworking and are gradually going to be coming back, this summer, this fall, what have you. Here, I just wanted to go over some of the branding and visual collateral and materials that we have available for you, and kind of what to expect when you do get back on transit or when you're riding. So this slide kind of just has the hodgepodge of all of the different kind of things that you might see on our service and online. So this link at the bottom, Healthier Metro, kingcounty.gov/Healthier Metro, that's really the main site that you'll want to go to really prepare for your next ride, know what to expect. Since COVID started, we have been disinfecting our vehicles every day, not just our vehicles, but our boats and every other kind of vehicle that people are riding on. We've upgraded our air filtration. We are requiring masks on all our services. So even if you haven't been riding, you'll see masks required flashing on the front of in the sides of the bus, and it'll show bus full, because we have capacity limits on the buses to ensure that we're not exceeding physical distancing requirements. But we will be slowly ramping those those capacity limits higher as more folks get vaccinated, and we look at case counts across the county. There are physical signs on some of the seats that block them off, so that people know, just try to nudge people towards sitting a little farther away from each other. And then in that picture on the left there, you can see we have installed safety partitions, just like you would see at the grocery store, the pharmacy, or any other stores, but just to provide more of that barrier, physical barrier for our operators to keep them safe as they're, taking people around all day, and just allow a little more distance as people are paying their fares and paying cash at the front of the bus. And then we've also recently, I think as in the last month or two, we've installed mask dispensers on all of our buses and all of our fleets. So even on the water taxi and other services, you can see we have mask dispensers, so that, if folks don't have their own mask or can't provide their own, that is an available option for them to be able to safely ride our service and keep everyone on board safe. And then if you go to the website, this website and this material is also available in 9 other languages. And then there's one-pagers and other things that are available. And we have some informational videos too that kind of walk through all the different safety features, health and safety measures that we're taking on our buses. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to go through a couple more resources for you, since you'll get this deck afterwards. So the first one is the site that I just talked about. So all of that material that you just saw will be on that Healthier Metro page. There's also a really useful section there that shows kind of how to plan your trip, since we know maybe it's been a while for people, and some of the routes are a little different. Some might be suspended, might be reduced, and we're slowly ramping back up. It's kind of a reminder of, you can use text for departures, you can look up the schedules, how to do all of those things, so you can get more real-time information as you're out there riding. The second link there is to our service change page. So as Bebhinn mentioned, we have our twice annual service change. And that's in March and September, and the September one will be really big. It will be the Northgate Link extension opening. So, Sound Transit's opening those additional stations. And so King County Metro has been working out in community for the past 2 years, doing public engagement with them to really figure out what a restructured bus network that better connects people to the light rail and better connects people, east-west and other things. And so that restructure will be coming in September. And so the service change page really will be your main resource for finding out how that changes your different commutes. And I know that's a little far from South King County, but it is kind of a big regional thing, so it will probably impact traffic and routes and commute patterns down south as well. The third resource that's really cool, we kind of released it at a weird time, like around New Year's, so I think maybe a lot of people didn't see it, but it's a rider dashboard, and it has just a ton of data in it. It's not intended to be a real-time tool, but it has ridership information. We have mask usage information on our different routes. We have information about what buses are tend to be more at capacity, so you can kind of see what buses maybe are a little busier and a little more crowded, and you can kind of make your decisions based on that. And that tool is also available in 9 languages, so feel free to check that out and share that with people. If you're a data nerd, you will probably really enjoy this and get into the weeds on that. So, and then the 4th tool I wanted to share is just our Metro Matters blog, which is kind of where we put all of our information, but anything related to service, but also kind of other initiatives or things that we're doing, other engagement opportunities that we're working on as an agency, you'll find those there. So you can easily subscribe and kind of just keep tabs on kind of what's happening at Metro. Next slide. Great. And then just to circle a little bit back to the business program, as you know, Will gave the great overview of Passport, and that's the program that I work on along with a team of people. But we also have another business program available called Business Choice. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. I don't work on that program, but I can definitely get you in touch with the folks that do. That's a little bit more of a, I guess the best equivalent is like an a la carte option, right? It's just complete flexibility with providing Orca cards and benefits to your employees. You can put as much money as you want on it or whatever products you want, and then employees can also contribute to that as well. And there's no contract or annual fees or anything like that. It's just kind of pay as you go. And you can do that with as few as 1 employee. So just a different model, and it works for some businesses, and for some businesses Passport is better. So you know, if you're curious, just feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to chat through that and see what works best for you. And then I think that is all I have. Next slide. Yeah, so that's just my phone number, and then my email is on the earlier slides, but feel free to reach out. I think I just want to reiterate with Will that, you know, we've the Small Business Incentive is a grant program through the state, and we've had that for 3 years, and Will's been managing it for a good chunk of that time. And so we've seen a lot of success with this program. And so in the next, you know, month or so, we just really want to make sure that as many small businesses are signing up as possible, especially as you all are making decisions about how and when to get people back to work and back to the work site. And then as a team and as a program, you know, we are starting to look at, okay, how has this program been working and what worked and what didn't, and then how can we start to move forward? And Will and his team have done a lot of work to help us figure out, you know, how we move forward and whether this is the right model for best assisting small businesses and other businesses that we know we want to help serve, and to just better provide transit access and mobility for people across the region, and especially in South King County. And I think that's all we have. So feel free to get in touch with Will or I if you have any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cindy and Will and King County Metro. Really appreciate that overview. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce Gracie with Lyft. Gracie, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Gracie, and I lead Lyft's community engagement for the Pacific Northwest. And so I partner with community organizations to help remove transportation as a barrier to mobility. And a lot of those organizations are located in South King County. I also connect with drivers regularly to make sure that their voice is heard, both within the community and the broader community, company and the community. All right, next slide. So I'll start with Lyft's mission, which is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. So our vision is to provide transportation access to everyone, especially the communities that need it the most. So this includes redefining how we view transportation's role in connecting communities and providing positive societal impacts on both riders and drivers. So we know that in order to build thriving and equitable communities, we need to provide a transportation network that works for everybody, allowing people to select a mode based on their needs so they can get to work, school, or wherever they need to go. So I'll share a few ways that Lyft supports transportation equity. Next slide. All right, so Lyft's 2021 Economic Impact Report, and that was based on data from 2020, highlighted some key statistics about Lyft riders. So the report let us know that 43% of trips in Washington state last year started or ended in low-income communities. And almost half of all riders said it would have been difficult or even impossible to travel without Lyft or ride-sharing services. So if anything's been realized during a year plus of a global pandemic, it's that people still need to move, even during this pandemic, to get around to essential services and work. And so rideshare has been able to help provide that service. Next slide. So our local Lyft Up initiatives, Lyft has a deep community relationships with organizations serving communities of color and historically underrepresented communities. So we have long-standing social impact initiatives through Lyft Up. And historically, we've supported voting access, so providing free and discounted rides to the polls and drop boxes here in Washington State, grocery access, helping individuals and communities access healthy foods, jobs access, providing transportation support to job interviews and essential jobs, and then disaster relief, stepping in to support and provide transportation in moments of crises. And that's exactly what Lyft did throughout this pandemic. And so in March, I joined Lyft. So right around the time we had the shelter in place order, and Lyft immediately jumped in to provide ride credit support for essential travel. So we provided over $450,000 worth of ride credits to 27 organizations across the Puget Sound. And this support was targeted to organizations serving the most vulnerable community members. So from supporting essential workers to survivors of domestic violence, getting shelter, to individuals getting to interviews or accessing food banks. We also jumped in to support a great organization, World Relief Seattle, with a grocery delivery program. So while Lyft typically focuses on getting individuals to point A to B, we saw a need to support the movement of essential items like groceries. And so we did that in partnership with World Relief Seattle, and that's a picture of it right there, but in South King County. I'm also excited to share that we launched Lyft's first ever local racial justice community grant alliance last fall. And the alliance is a group of community leaders who serve communities of color in the region. And they convene quarterly to help Lyft select cash and ride credit grant recipient organizations who are working to end systemic racism and white supremacy. We also know that one of the biggest barriers to getting individuals vaccinated is transportation to vaccine sites. So we're currently working with community organizations to help individuals access vaccine sites across the state. So far, we've partnered with about 7 organizations in the South King County area, including Hopelink, who's on the call today, in the region to provide free ride credit support to vaccine sites. And so if you're a nonprofit that's looking for vaccine access support, I'll share some information after this presentation about how to connect with me for that. You move to the next slide. So when we talk about transportation equity, an important piece of that equation is equity for those providing the transportation service. And so in this case of Lyft, drivers. We know that 67% of drivers in Washington come from communities of color. We also know that 98% of drivers work in jobs outside of Lyft or are students in addition to driving. And 93% of drivers drive less than 20 hours a week and give the vast majority of all rides. So it's really important to understand the unique needs of gig economy drivers when we talk about transportation equity. And my job is really dedicated to understanding the needs of drivers in the community. And so how we're working to understand those needs, we have a few initiatives, including a Black driver community circle, where we learn about the unique experience Black drivers face. We formed regional driver advisory councils who help give us feedback on the driver experience, as well as help build those driver communities. And so in a recent TNC-DNC driver poll, and this was out of Colorado, 91% of drivers said that they would stop driving completely if they lost the flexibility to choose when and where they drive. And this is consistent with what we've heard across the country. So we know that independence and flexibility is an equity issue. This flexibility that the gig economy provides allows caretakers, students, parents, business owners to earn supplemental income at times that make sense to their lifestyle. So there's this incredible demand for people to earn on their own schedules, and Lyft really stands with the vast majority of drivers in the region who are fighting for this new labor model to maintain this independent contractor status with no earnings ceiling while still maintaining basic protections and added benefits. So again, I am just so happy to be a part of this conversation today, and I look forward to talking more about our transportation equity work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gracie. And now we have reached the opportunity for our attendees to ask our questions to our panelists. So just a reminder for all of you who are joining us through Zoom webinar, there is the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. You can go ahead and type your question for the panelists there. If you'd prefer, you can type your questions into the chat function. We can get them there, or feel free to raise your hand and we can promote you and you can ask your question live. If you are watching via the Facebook Live broadcast, please go ahead and type your question into the comment section. And thank you so much, Scott Schaefer, who's helping us with the Facebook Live broadcast with the B-Town blog. He has already copied and pasted some of those questions into the chat, so I have them available here. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right into the Q&A. The first question is definitely focused towards you, Cindy, and Will with King County Metro. And this question has to do with, again, you provided a lot of data. I know there's a lot of data nerds out here in the business community as well. Is the data what informs you when you are trying to determine what bus routes to cancel, why this route is canceled and not this route? Why are you bringing this route back first over this route? Can you just talk a little bit about what the process for the agency is in determining both canceling routes and adding new routes in, or adding them back in as we get back to coming back to work in person?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I think it's only a service planning question. So we have a service planning team that really are the ones who are figuring out what to do with all the routes. But I think as an agency, we really are prioritizing equity and sustainability in everything that we do and how we invest where needs are greatest. And so we have a really robust community engagement program that I worked on for a couple of years. And so, we get feedback all the time, right? We have a really big call center where a lot of people call in and have a lot of questions. We do a robust community engagement on a number of different projects. So as we're getting those different feedback from different sources, we're taking all of that and making sure that our service planning team has all that information so that they can make an informed decision about what to do in those with all of that information. Specifically to service restoration, we have been working with all of our business customers to understand what their return to work plans are, especially those larger employers, to understand, if a company like Microsoft or Amazon is going to be coming back, which, a lot of them have announced that they are, then that does mean we need to kind of turn on some of those routes, right? But a lot of it really just is those different inputs coming in and making sure that we're also applying that equity lens to it as service planning is thinking about what to bring back. And then I think it was February or March, we started community engagement around service restoration. And so there was a big survey that went out to the public, but we've also been continuing, more community-based conversations around that. But having no longer being on that team, I don't know all the details, but so service restoration is definitely something that we are actively engaging with community on and factoring in hugely into those decisions about what to bring back and what to suspend. And hopefully, as ridership is starting to increase, as Bebhinn and Will have mentioned, we'll be activating more and more service as we move into the summer and the fall.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cindy. I appreciate that, especially the piece that, it's equal parts, right? The looking at the data, but also listening to community feedback and doing that outreach. So really appreciate that. I don't know, Will, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Not particularly, no. I think Cindy hit the nail on the head with that one. Just making sure it's both the community input and the data and sort of combining them for a holistic view of it. Yep.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. I think this question could probably be for all of us, really, which is what can businesses and community members do to push for or advocate for more transportation equity in their communities? So I'll just open that up to everyone.
I guess I can jump in if that's okay. I would say that's great. And, I think at Metro, we are doing community engagement pretty much all the time on any number of things. And so there are a lot of opportunities, especially with kind of service restructures and kind of major infrastructure projects, things like Eastlink opening. We're doing a really robust community engagement process around that. That's going to last like 3 years. And so a lot of Metro does have a lot of different opportunities to get engaged as businesses, as community members. We put together mobility boards, which are paid opportunities for community members to participate and really help design with our service planners in the same room, what these big restructures might look like and how to elevate community priorities in those conversations. We have partner review boards that are, kind of major partners or institutions in a certain geographic area that will be able to also give feedback on restructure. So I think the big example is recently, I think it was last fall, we implemented the Renton, Kent, and Auburn service change. And that was a huge 2-year effort with tons of organizations and institutions and groups and community members, especially in South King County, to really help shape what that restructure looked like and make sure that it really met the community's needs. And then that, will transition into the future Rapid Red R line. So I would say just get in contact with us at Metro, and I'm happy to be your point of contact and connect you with opportunities to get engaged on those different boards. We also have we have like a Transportation Advisory Commission, so it's just a county board that anyone in the county can join. So there's plenty of opportunities to get involved, whether through these more formal opportunities or maybe just more informal things. So just, get in touch. And I think also, as in my past experience, I think Hopelink and Bebhinn and those other mobility coalitions are a really great way to get plugged into all of the other work that's happening around the county, around transportation and advocacy especially. And Hopelink is just a hugely great resource for many, many people. And the mobility coalitions are a great way for organizations across different sectors to come together. And I had found those meetings really helpful when I was working in community engagement. So highly recommend going to those meetings too.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And I'll just piggyback a little bit off of what you've said. And this question is similar to one that I'm seeing in the Q&A as well. Business leaders, business owners, folks in our community here in the audience today are more than welcome to join our several different mobility coalitions, particularly the South King County Mobility Coalition, especially if you're wanting to elevate the experience of you yourself, your employees, or your community members, so that we can find those solutions that work today to fill the transportation and mobility needs that you're experiencing, and then also connect to that more systemic adjustment, that more systemic conversation that is ongoing and will be with us for quite some time. So by all means, I will post in the chat. I believe I have the ability to do so. I'll post in the chat a link to our website so that you can learn more about our work. And then I'll also highlight the South King County Mobility Coalition has an upcoming event open to all community members, particularly those providing essential services like employment, food access, nonprofit work, anything like that. We have a roundtable conversation scheduled for April 30th, which is designed to, like I was saying, find those solutions that work today for the problems, the barriers that we're experiencing as a community, and then build that lasting networking, that lasting relationship, which can affect positive change in our communities. And so, thank you so much, Cindy, for kind of elevating the work of the Hopelink Mobility Coalitions. Our membership is always open, and so if you're finding yourself having conversations with your social network or with your your professional network around how to get to those crucial resource points, or even those kind of, like I was saying, those social hobbies or social connections. Those are fundamental aspects of our lives, and they're connected to mobility. And we are always working across sectors with diverse stakeholders. And so please, please, please consider joining our table. You are more than welcome.
Thank you so much for that, Bebhinn. Yes, that was a question that we did answer live that was in the Q&A from one of our Zoom attendees, which is just how do we get more involved, right? And how do we participate? Just a reminder that if any business or community member has any interest in connecting with the King County Metro programs or Hopelink or Lyft, or just has general transportation questions, maybe how to access ORCA for your employees or the small business program, please do come to the chamber. We like to say that we're better than Google, and that we are able to really connect you directly to those resources and provide you the information that you need to be successful in your business, but also just questions you might have as a community member. So again, there's no shortage of opportunities to connect and engage. And if you ever have any questions about how to do so, please do leverage the relationship with the chamber, ask questions, contact us, and we'll be happy to connect you. Any other comments or feedback just on how or where people can be more involved or more engaged to be more part of that process?
I think from the business side, and both Cindy and Bebhinn touched on this really well, but it's just so important to center the needs of the community that you represent. And so if you're a business, asking your employees what their transportation barriers are. I know at Lyft, before we go out and give ride credit support to the community, we talk regularly with nonprofits to understand their needs. We're talking with drivers to understand the needs of drivers before making decisions. And so that community-centered decision making is so important. And as Cindy touched on as well, when you're asking things, especially from communities of color, you're asking for their buy-in, you're asking for their support, their expertise, their brilliance, recognizing and compensating them for their efforts is super and incredibly important.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback, Gracie, especially that compensation piece is huge, right? Especially when we're talking about equity and engagement. So really, really appreciate that is, front and center for those initiatives. I think that we've touched on this next question already a little bit in the presentations, but just, anything that you might want to follow up and add to, which is how has the pandemic affected access to transportation in King County? Certainly, ride, share programs have all had to be adjusted. Safety protocols, that were mentioned certainly have been impacted. If we wanted to add anything else to just how the pandemic has affected transportation access, and then as we are coming out as, hopefully the end of the pandemic, what can we expect, transportation to look like in the near and long-term future?
I'm happy to jump in with some points on that. So one is, we have added a lot more flexibility to our different services. So, some services have certain requirements to be able to use them, right? You need to download an app so you can use something like Via, things like that. So that's a terrible example, sorry. But things like Vanpool, where, traditionally you needed like 5 to 10 people to start a van pool. Now it's just 2, right? So there's different requirements for our programs, and it's much more flexible. And those programs are also really excited to work with you and your business and your employees to figure out what are, as Gracie said, like what are your actual transportation needs? Are people working, non-peak hours? Does it make more sense to do something like Vanpool or Van Share to better meet people's needs who maybe your work site isn't close to a major bus line? And so there are other options that are part of like our business programs, so Passport or other things that just might be a really great option, which is why we just love to talk to you about what your transportation needs are and how we can help meet those with our programs or without. And then the second point about kind of just longer term, we have a COVID response and recovery plan that we were writing, we wrote up last summer. And so that is on the Healthier Metro page, and I worked on that as well. And so that kind of lists out, kind of the major actions and steps that we are taking as we respond to COVID, because at that time we thought we were going to recover, we were just responding still. And so we also updated that list in March. Can look at that and kind of see what are Metro's kind of longer term things that we are working on as we're coming out of recovery. And then, that kind of slots into like really big policy changes and questions that we're tackling as an agency around how to center equity and sustainability. So those are kind of higher level conversations. But the response and recovery plan kind of gives you a high level if you're super curious. It's kind of a long document, but there's a good executive summary.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to piggyback off of your comments, Cindy. I think that flexibility and that kind of adjustment for lived experience and what people need has been seen not only with King County Metro, who's been a fantastic partner for the community, I would say, but also in the volunteer services available in our region and those more I would call them non-traditional transportation resources. I think that's been a major shift in our mobility landscape. Folks being a little bit more addressing of needs and addressing of diversity of needs has been a fantastic, I hesitate to call it this, but a silver lining of the pandemic and how we've all had to kind of band together and really help each other out. So yeah, the kind of adjustment level, the kind of flexibility that's involved in hailing a volunteer-based ride has really expanded these days. Absolutely, I always think of Vanpool and Van Chair when I think of the flexibility requirements. That reduction down to two users is huge and has really expanded the interest, I would say, for that service. And yeah, I hope that kind of, my hope for recovery, my hope for the mobility landscape post-COVID is that understanding of diversity of experience and diversity of need remains true and remains centered in our communities, so that folks can access the resources available to them and that the resources available to them make sense for our community members.
I think to add on to that from Lyft's perspective, I mean, the rideshare has been used completely differently now than it has been pre-pandemic. We've seen a big shift in rideshare usage as an essential service. Like people who don't have car ownership, people who might not have or feel safe in public transit during this time have really relied on rideshare services to get to where they need to go. And so for us, it was paramount to jump in right away and ensure that we are protecting the safety of both drivers and riders. And so once we had that down, we knew we needed to jump in and help provide a critical service during this really unfortunate time. And we expect things to pick back up soon. We're already seeing a huge demand with Washington opening it back up, vaccination, increasing eligibility. And so just getting drivers back out, and we have priority vaccination for them. And so they're eligible to get vaccinated now. And so we're seeing a big uptick in ridership as it has traditionally been.
Perfect, great. I'm so glad you touched on that, Gracie, because that was one of the questions that we also had from one of our Facebook viewers, which is, essentially just, what are, Lyft and Hopelink and King County Metro doing to help support their drivers, and, access to the vaccine is certainly a huge piece of that, so that the drivers can feel safe, as essential workers going about and doing their work. What other programs or initiatives are in place to, help support drivers?
I can start with Lyft drivers. And so, like I mentioned before, it was just critical to make sure that we're maintaining the safety of drivers. We know that some drivers have stopped driving during this time, and the vast majority of our drivers use it as supplemental income. So we've also seen drivers join because of a loss of employment in other areas. And so we've seen an uptake of people, using rideshare as a supplemental source of income. And so we provided a lot of webinars to drivers on what resources are available to them now. We have been following CDC guidelines, offering PPE to drivers, as well as we have a hub where they can go in anytime and ask questions or provide services.
Yeah, I can't provide a ton of detail, but we have been following safety guidelines and things like that, but also providing PPE for employees, et cetera. I think the partitions were installing the safety partitions on the buses was a huge thing to us being able to safely collect fares again and ensure that drivers had that extra layer of protection. And then just a shout out to a couple of different businesses and nonprofits and community groups that have really banded together to help donate food and other things to our drivers at the bases. There was a driver appreciation week last week, and they brought food to some of the bases and just to show their appreciation. So the business community has really stepped up to support our businesses, and people have donated masks. So lots of things like that, which has been really great to just support our workers and our operators who are doing the hard work of getting people to where they need to go around the region. And then I think the other thing to speak to vaccine access, there was a vaccine clinic for King County employees at one of the South Base, just I think last week. So that was the first one, and I'm not sure how many, if there are more planned, but definitely making sure that employees have the option to get vaccinated if they choose to is critical.
I think another piece of this question too is making sure that riders, that users of our transportation system know what measures are in place so that they can feel informed and feel included in the safety measures and empowered in that way. So, my colleagues and I on the mobility management team have remained present in the community, mostly virtually, giving that information, spreading that information as to, as Cindy was saying in her presentation, mask requirements, partition use, sanitization measures that are occurring across our transportation networks. That information not only helps protect riders, but it helps protect drivers as well, operators. If there's one lesson that this pandemic can teach us, it's that the actions of one person affect many. So we're connected, and what we can do for ourselves is also something that we can do for another person. So providing that information, providing not only the rules and regulations, quote unquote, but also the kind of empowering people with the tools to keep themselves and others safe. Has been a huge part of how we've shown up in the community. As to vaccine access, our team has a coordinated vaccine transportation helpline, which I will provide the information to Andrea so that we can spread it out among this group. That's the online form and a phone number that's available weekdays, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. so that we can find the transportation resource for you, so that transportation is not the reason someone does not get vaccinated. It's to and from. And Gracie is one of our partners in this effort. We're all about getting people to where they need to go, and right now, folks need to go to vaccination sites, and so we're providing that kind of one-on-one support as a team. So I look forward to sharing that information.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Bebhinn. And, thank you to everyone. Clearly transportation equity has a huge impact on our small businesses and our community. And we really appreciate all the work that you do to help increase access and serve our community. So again, thank you for sharing some of that information with our community today. Thank you also so much to Scott and Teresa Schaefer, South King Media, of course, again, Bebhinn at Hopelink, Cindy and Will at King County Metro, Gracie at Lyft, and of course, all of you, our attendees, for making the time to be here today, connecting and convening on the issues impacting our community and working in collaboration to solution find is central to our work here at the Chamber, and we so appreciate your engagement and your support. This webinar will be posted on our website, seattlesouthsidechamber.com/smart, so that you can view and share it later. You can also donate directly to our work there. Even a small donation helps us continue to serve our community, and we are so very grateful and appreciate any and all contributions. You can also find more information about upcoming virtual events there. Again, thank you so much to everyone. Stay healthy and stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.